Good evening. Welcome to the Salem Area Mass Transit District Board of Directors meeting for February. I'll call the meeting to order. I am noting that we do have a quorum, so we can conduct business today, and I will lead the board through the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. General Manager Pollock, could you lead us in the safety moment?
Okay, thank you. So I am going to provide some tips on safe driving, and you may think, oh, we should have had this yesterday. But the weekend is still potential for more winter weather. So some tips for driving in the snow. Well, first off, stay home unless you have to go somewhere, say like a board meeting. But seriously, only go out if necessary. Drive slowly and always adjust your speed down to account for the lower traction when driving on snow or ice. Accelerate and decelerate slowly. Increase your following distance. Know your brakes, whether they're anti-lock brakes or not. Keep the heel of your foot on the floor and use the ball of your foot to apply firm, steady pressure. Don't stop if you can avoid it. Don't power up hills, and don't stop going on a hill. But probably the most important tip is leave it to the professionals and take the bus. And that's my safety moment for today.
Thank you very much. We do not have any announcements or changes to the agenda, so we'll go ahead and proceed to the presentation portion.
Great, thank you. For our first set of presentations, I'll ask Patricia Feeney, our Chief Communications Officer, to make the introductions.
Thank you. Good evening, President Davidson and members of the board. This past fall, we had 2 surveys that were conducted by our TransPro partners. Earlier this evening, our TransPro representative took us into a deep dive with all of those results. Tonight, we're going to have more of an overview. The Cherriots Satisfaction Survey was the first one that was conducted. 419 surveys were completed over the course of 5 days. This was followed by the Paratransit Survey, where there were 335 completed over the course of 18 days. Also during December, we launched the Community Value Survey, which resulted in 391 completed surveys. These were collected by an outside third-party vendor. These were citizens of both Salem and Kaiser. Later this year, TransPro is going to be following up with 2 more surveys in these 2 areas, customer satisfaction and community value. On behalf of the district, I would like to thank our TransPro partners for being invaluable as we create the Cherriots of the future. I now have the pleasure of turning the microphone over to James Rubin, who will present the results of the 2 surveys.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Hello. Thank you, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. I had my own personal version of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles to get here, but one of my favorite movies, and I'm a bit of a transportation geek, so I'll take any opportunity I can to try out all sorts of different modes. So it's a pleasure to be here before you. Can we get the first presentation up? Fantastic. So I'm going to take you through a summary of the survey results of our customer experience survey. If I can get the ability to advance the slide. Not working. There we go. Thank you. Just what we'll take you through here today. The customer experience survey, I'll take you through the fixed bus results, the paratransit results. We'll take a look at the methodology, the results overview, and some of the survey results. And then I'll take you through a high-level look at the community value survey results, also the methodology and overview, and some of those deeper results here. So let's start on the fixed bus route results. And in terms of an overview, just before we dive into some of the more detailed stuff here, a really whopping 95% of customers customers who use buses, who use the Chariot buses, are satisfied with the bus service. That is a tremendously high number, really one of the highest numbers I've ever seen, if not the highest number of customer satisfaction I've ever seen in doing this kind of surveying. 96% believe that the Chariots bus provides value to the community. That's important too, but we're going to look at the community survey later, so we'll hold off on that. The things that customers are most satisfied with are timeliness of getting to their destination, feeling safe on the bus, and buses operating on the days needed. Things that customers are least satisfied with are bus cleanliness, feeling safe waiting for the bus, and buses operating at the times that they need. And the three most important things to customers, to Cherriots customers, are on-time performance, travel time, and hours of operation. I think it's really worth noting that travel time is both something that customers are most satisfied with and think is one of the three most important things to them. That in and of itself may be one of the things that's driving your really high customer satisfaction results. Just a quick touch on the methodology. We heard from Patricia a really good introduction, so you don't need me to spend much time on this. The really important number to focus on here is in the lower left corner, which is the margin of error. So all of the percentages we look at tonight have come with about a 4.8% plus or minus margin of error. This is based on the number of people we interviewed and the confidence level of 95%. So keep that in mind as we look at some of these results. First up, overall satisfaction. We saw this in the results overview. 95% of Cherriots customers are satisfied with the service. When you contrast that with an 81% satisfaction rate across our industry sampled average, that's the average for other transit operators that we work with at TransPro, it's an incredible, incredible accomplishment. And 95 is just such a high number, and 81 is the industry sampled average. 14 percentage points higher than that is really astonishing. And even perhaps more astonishing on the right here you see is that in the past year, 59% of Cherriots customers are telling us that service has gotten better. That's also just a really, really impressive finding. This is a number that typically we see a much higher percentage for stays the same when we do this survey across other transit operators. So the fact that 59% are telling you that transit got better is really, really, really impressive. We like to use this concept of net promoter score. This is a private industry concept of asking people who buy products whether they'd recommend that product to their friends and family. We apply that on the transit side. We really like this idea of using it for the public sector. We feel like transit customers deserve the same respect and treatment that private sector customers do. And here you could see that Cherriots Net Promoter Score is a 65 out of a negative 100 to 100 scale. So what we do here is we ask customers on a 0 to 10 scale whether they'd recommend Cherriots. If they give you a 0 through 6, we call them detractors. They're not likely to recommend. 9 and 10 are promoters. They are likely to recommend. And we subtract those detractors from the promoters to get your Net Promoter Score. Net Promoter Scores could be negative. They could be negative 10, negative 12, all the way to negative 100 if customers are really unhappy. But here we see a Net Promoter Score of 65%, 65 points. Compare that to 35 across the industry. The industry Net Promoter Score for fixed route service is 35. Cherriots is 65. Tremendous, tremendous achievement there. The only negative around this, with this both such a high Net Promoter Score and such a high customer satisfaction rate, is the fact that it's going to be very hard to increase those even more because you're already starting at such a high level. But that's not a bad problem to have. On-time performance and travel time, very important to customers. You could see that 84% of Cherriots customers are telling us that the bus usually runs on time compared to 70% across other transit operators. Really, really, really good result there. And even better, 94% say that the vehicle gets me to my destination in a good amount of time compared to 83% across the industry. Really, really, really positive result there. Customers, for the most part, are finding bus stops a little less clean than the actual buses, but the bus stop is pretty much on par with the industry sampled average of 63, 65%. Those are about the same. What you do see is that customers are much more satisfied with bus cleanliness. 87% of customers are satisfied with Cherriots bus cleanliness compared to only 73% across other transit agencies. So really, really, really good results there as well. This is what we like to do with each of these attributes. We try to look at the satisfaction, but we also try to look at the importance, right? There's two scales here. How satisfied are customers and how important are these things to customers? The x-axis here along the horizon is importance, the y-axis is satisfaction, and we place each attribute on this chart. So things that fall into the bottom right are attributes that customers find very important but are less satisfied with. So take a look at A and B here. Both of those are very important attributes, buses arriving on time and travel time. But B, travel time, customers are a little more satisfied with. Buses arriving on time, A, customers are less satisfied with. So that's why A falls into this quadrant on the lower right. We feel like the attributes that are in the lower right are what we call key drivers. Those are things that are most likely to impact overall customer satisfaction and net promoter score if those things go up or down. That doesn't mean the other attributes are to be ignored. It's just that we like to focus on that bottom right because we know those are the things that are most important to people and those are the things that customers are less satisfied with. Turning towards paratransit service, another really astonishingly high satisfaction rate of 95%. 95% of paratransit customers are satisfied with the service. That means, so what are they most satisfied with? Safety on vehicles and vehicles operating, safety on vehicles and vehicles being operated safely, both at 97%. What are customers less satisfied with? Having 96% satisfaction rates, I wouldn't exactly call low satisfaction. So vehicles arriving on time and drivers being friendly and helpful, both are at 96%, which is 1 percentage point lower than 97, so we'll call it less. Fair price, however, is at 93%, so we will legitimately say that customers are less satisfied with that. The three most important things to paratransit customers are on-time performance, friendly and helpful drivers, and easy and convenient trip planning. A slightly different methodology for this population, harder to reach with an intercept survey, so we do this via telephone call. We conducted 335 calls over 18 days from December 2nd through the 14th. And again, this one has a margin of error slightly higher, 5.4%. That's just because we interviewed 335 people instead of 418 people. So as you have smaller numbers, the margin of error goes up a little bit. That's typical in terms of statistics. Overall satisfaction, as we saw from the preview there, 95% are satisfied with Lyft service. That's compared to 88% in the industry, so a really nice achievement there for Cherriots. Net promoter score. Whoa, 74 net promoter score for Lyft paratransit service. That is astonishing. 79% of people who took the survey who are Lyft customers are promoters. Remember what that means. That means that 8 out of 10 survey respondents said 9 or 10 for I would recommend Lyft service to my friends and family. Really, 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 really astonishing achievement. And 74 is compared to a 50 across the industry for net promoter score. Customers are very satisfied with on-time performance and travel time with Lyft service, both at 96%, close to the industry sampled average for Lyft takes me to the places I need to go, but much, much higher than the average for the vehicle gets me to my destination in a good amount of time. We often find that paratransit customers score this slightly lower, especially when it's a shared service and the service doesn't exactly take them exactly from their home to their destination. Having said that, 96% of your customers are feeling satisfied with this, which is really astonishing. We know that paratransit customers like their drivers, and that Cherriots is no exception. So 96 and 97%, the drivers are helpful and courteous. The drivers drive safely. At 96 and 97%, I would call that virtually almost every single survey respondent saying that, really, with just a very small group, a handful of people saying no. And here's key driver analysis for paratransit and for Lyft. So A and B attributes all the way to the right, most important to customers, slightly lower than average satisfaction. So we're going to say vehicles arriving on time and drivers being helpful and courteous, though those are things that people are satisfied with. You'll notice the scale on the right is 90 to 100. That's a pretty high scale. We're not saying 0 to 100. These things are already seeing 94, 95, 96% satisfaction rates, but they're slightly lower than the average. So vehicles arriving on time and drivers being helpful and courteous are things that if you focused a little bit more resources on, you could potentially drive that overall satisfaction rate up to 98, 99, perhaps win over those last 3 people on the survey that didn't say that they were incredibly satisfied. The D is fair price, right? So that we noted earlier from the results, customers are slightly less satisfied with that, down at about 93%, but certainly in the importance quadrant. So that's the key driver analysis for paratransit service. I want to turn now to the community values survey. This is an incredibly powerful tool. This is where we go out and we ask people in the community what they think of Chariot service, not just people who use Cherriots, but actually people who live in the community. So some of these people are going to be Cherriots customers, but as you'll see in a minute, the vast majority of them are not. And getting their perspectives on transit, right? What would encourage them to use transit more, what they find in terms of value in the service is a really, really, really important measure for us in terms of assigning value to transit in the community that goes beyond just moving people from A to B. So what are we seeing here? Slightly different methodology with the community survey. This was done by a team between December 10th and December 22nd. We do this via phone as well. It's a call center, and we weight the results. With this particular survey, we like to weight the results so that it properly represents the regional demographics to make sure that we're not oversampling or overweighing one particular group over another. We have about a 4.85 statistical significance. And again, we're going to compare this to other agencies and other results. And as a preview, 8 out of 10 community members feel that Cherriots is valuable to the community. I'll show you those numbers in 1 second, so let's hold on that. Community members believe Cherriots brings most value in providing jobs. 88% of the people who did the survey, again, not just Cherriots customers, residents across the region. 88% say Cherriots provides value in providing access to jobs, providing transportation options to people with special mobility needs, 88%. So really, really important findings there. So this is what I'm talking about. If you take a look on the right, you're really only talking about 7% of the people who took this survey use Cherriots 2 to 4 times per month or more often. Right? 2 to 4 times a month or more often is 7%. The other 93% don't use Cherriots that often. 7% use it once a month or less. 18% used to use it but don't anymore. 68% of the people on the community value survey are not Cherriots customers, haven't been Cherriots customers, and are not currently Cherriots customers. So it's important to know who we're talking about here. And what are they telling us? So on the left, we understand these services that Cherriots offers. 79% of the community do understand the services that Cherriots offers. Okay. Cherriots is a valuable part of the community. 84%. Remember before I told you that number of 7% are regular Cherriots customers, but 84% of the people on this survey find value in the service. So this really speaks volume. Think about that. All of those people across the community, across the region who are saying, well, yeah, I'm not necessarily a customer, but I'm really happy that this service exists. I think it's really important. I think it's a tremendous value to our community. Really, really, really good stuff there. The number goes down a little bit when we ask people, well, how valuable is Cherriots to you personally? 25%. I think that makes sense, right? Fewer people on the survey are actually using the service. But the fact that it's still 25%, so much higher than those 7%, even people personally, to them as an individual, oh, I like the fact that Cherriots is here. I find value in that. I'm not using it today. I might in the future. So we think those are really, really astounding findings there. And that really is the end of the community survey and the satisfaction surveys and the end of my presentation. I will address any questions.
Any questions? Director Carney.
Thank you, President Davidson. I'm curious, on the community value survey, we didn't have a comparison to an industry average standard or whatever the acronym was we were using in the previous slide. What's the reason for that?
So the ones where we don't have industry sampled averages is because I believe those are questions that we created for the survey specifically for Cherriots.
So the whole community value piece is just for Cherriots?
No. There are just a couple of questions on the community. So I understand the services Cherriots offers was one. that we didn't have an industry sample average bar for, and Cherriots
see. Okay.
contributes to the, but the one that says Cherriots is a valuable part of the community and Cherriots is valuable to me personally, those are very standard
Yep.
questions. And in fact, the Cherriots results at 84 is pretty close to our industry sample average of 83 for value. You know, but we do have an industry sample average for those, yes.
I was looking too at the previous slide, the usage and trip frequency. It'd be interesting to see how our community demographic that was surveyed compares to some of our sort of partner agencies throughout the TransPro system.
Yeah, I think that would be really interesting too. We could put that slide together. We have a national, yeah, we could, that would be interesting, yes, for sure.
And then just one other observation, I don't know that this would be at all an apples to apples comparison, but when I was looking at the key driver analysis for paratransit, one of the things that I recall hearing on many occasions is not all of this is about like the actual ride itself, where a lot of the experience paratransit users have with the system is in getting access to the ride, the scheduling of the ride. And that, I know we've had like some really dramatic improvements within our performance as a transit provider in that space, but it's not on here as a key driver analysis, and it seems to me that that is one of the big kind of barriers that I've heard about in the past, but maybe that's just kind of going away. Maybe everything is online anymore, and I'm getting older, so.
No, we certainly ask on the survey, how satisfied are you with your ability to, you know, make a reservation and access that. That's certainly in the deeper results. I think, you know,
Yeah.
I could point that to you and.
No, General Manager Pollock just pointed to me to a previous slide in your last presentation that I got lost in the details on, so appreciate that.
Sure.
Other questions? Yeah, please.
The game of, is the mic on or not? So when you started the presentation, you mentioned about trying to figure out what would get people to use transit service. And so like, I'm still left with that question, because I mean, when it comes to the community value, yes, 84% believe that Cherriots is valuable to community, and also like 86% are not on the buses. So what's gonna take to get them on the bus?
So there is a question that we asked on the community survey specifically around that, that's in the deeper detail. So I can point that out to you if you'd like, if via email, or you know, we could talk about that. But we specifically asked customers who we specifically asked customers who told us they once used Cherriots, who are no longer using Cherriots, why they're no longer using Cherriots. We also asked customers who are not using Cherriots, what would encourage you to use Cherriots? So we have those top reasons. I could pull them up, but it might take me a little while longer,
Yeah.
so it might be better for me to just give you an answer to that via email. I definitely have those results for sure.
Yeah, and
I think Alan has an answer.
So I do have it, and I found it while you were talking. So the top three were what would influence community members to ride the bus or consider riding the bus. The top one was more frequency. The second one was more routes to serve places I need to go. And the third was shelters at transit stops.
cool, thank you. I was also wondering if you had the data on, I think in the previous presentation was 29% of people have a commute of less than 15 minutes. And I just kind of want to know where they're at, because I'm like, if you have less than 15 minutes, maybe we can help you with that as well.
Right. I mean, remember that this is going to be the characteristics of the sample that we collected, right? So I wouldn't go and say that this is necessarily the characteristics of region in terms of the travel, but close, right? Because we got a 5% margin of error. So yeah, I'm always interested in subgroups, right? Like, what do we want to, let's talk to those people and let's see what we can find out from those people. And what we could do with the data is we can cross-tabulate the data. We can pull those people out specifically and look at some of their results to other questions to find out, are there anything interesting about this group? Is there something about their travel, their patterns, their demographics, something that sort of speaks out? We've done that and we can do that. The challenge becomes having it be statistically significant, which it probably won't be once we start slicing that up. But totally fascinating stuff to learn as we do that. So we could do that for you for sure.
Thank you.
Director Duncan?
On the community survey, thank you, President Davidson. On the community survey, there was a page towards the end where you had like other comments or other things that people said. What I wanted to know is every time I start talking, my dog decides to pick up her ball and start bouncing it. So excuse that. But I was going to say that it has those items that are other things people said. Does that mean that all of the other responses were they like multiple choice and then gave like an open-ended anything else you want to say? Or were all of the questions open-ended and people just happened to say those items and you've only mentioned the statistically significant answers and then included those others that were outliers?
So many of the questions were closed in the sense that respondents were provided answers to choose from. I think those other responses are other things that people mention that they find value in having Cherriots that aren't necessarily quantifiable. There's sort of maybe one or two or three people mention this, and they're sort of worth putting at the back of the results so that people could see that look, these things were mentioned, but they're not. There are not enough of them that they kind of make their way into the charts, because otherwise the charts would kind of run way off the screen.
So one of those items had to do with having transit later or earlier in the day. And that is a thing that I am particularly interested in. I have a history of working in careers that really put people working later than our buses run. And I personally work with a lot of people who say that they would take the bus, but they end up carpooling or, scrimping for a used vehicle rather than taking the bus simply because they don't run in times that they can take them. Is there any way that we could maybe include maybe some of the others, but particularly that one in future surveys?
Yeah,
that is potentially quantifiable.
I think it's actually in there, and I think that at the back is sort of, it probably should be recategorized into when we ask customers how satisfied are they with the span of service, the hours that the bus operates. That is a specific question in there.
So not for customers, but for the community, because clearly if you're a customer and the bus doesn't run at a time that you can take it, you probably won't be captured in the current customer survey.
That's a really interesting perspective. I think it makes a ton of sense to have that question in there for sure. So I'll bring that back to my folks. We'll take a look at it, and if it's not in there, we'll absolutely put that in there.
I really appreciate it.
I also just got a kitten, and at every meeting, the kitten runs across. It's like you only see the tail sometimes. Anyway.
I appreciate that.
Other questions for Mr. Rubin? All right. Well, thank you very much for this presentation. And I have a feeling we might see you very soon.
That is correct, but first let me ask Bobby Kidd, our Strategic Initiatives Administrator, to come up and make some opening comments.
Good evening, President Davidson and members of the board. So as a district, we've been,
I don't think it's
can you
on.
hear me?
Now we
Yeah,
can.
press it.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll start over. Good evening, President Davidson and members of the board. As a district, we've been able to partner with TransDash in order to clearly communicate the value we contribute to the community. It's going to aid us in that process. And what we did as a district was we chose a series of value metrics. And in the second quarter, we were able to report to TransDash those metrics. And I am now going to bring up Mr. James Rubin to talk about TransDash and our new dashboard for our value.
I apologize, I didn't have a wardrobe change. Hello. Okay. So let's pull up the TransDash presentation. This is something we're super excited about at TransPro. We just had our national TransDash presentation where we took the results of a bunch of our participating agencies and brought them together and looked at them together. It was a really exciting time. It was the first time we've done that. It was sort of the culminating moment, and it was a ton of work for all of us, particularly you guys here at Cherriots. I know that the first quarter of providing this kind of data never is the easiest, right? It's always sort of a learning process, and we figure things out as we move forward. So we expect it to get easier as we move forward. So I'm really excited to sort of give you a little bit of a background about TransDash, show you a little bit of the results that we can pull out of the TransDash board, and moving forward what we're doing for next steps. All right. So what we're going to do here, we'll do some congratulating. We'll talk about what are our different participating agencies in TransDash. We'll talk a little bit about transit's value over volume. I think you guys, since my previous presentation, probably have a pretty firm idea that that's something I care pretty passionately about. We'll talk about your mission, visions, and values just for a minute. I think you guys certainly know those, but they touch on TransDash, so we'll talk about those for a minute. And then we'll look specifically at what are the success outcomes, goals, and indicators that we're monitoring on the dashboard itself for you guys. And we will do a little summary of the dashboard. We'll do our next steps, and we'll talk about future important dates. So I said I was going to congratulate you, and I'm here to congratulate you. You guys are one of our first 8 participating agencies in TransDash. You are an industry innovator. You are doing these really, really, really important things. You're measuring what matters to customers, right? We're not measuring mean distance between failures and terminal on-time performance. Not that those things aren't important, but for the person standing on the corner waiting for the bus, mean distance between failures doesn't really resonate. It doesn't mean a lot to that person, right? But their experience, how satisfied they are, that does. So we're measuring what matters. These are meaningful outcomes. The success is clear here because we're quantifying goals. So everyone at the agency at all levels of staff understands this is what we're striving for. These are the numbers we're trying to achieve, and these are the things that we're doing to try to get to them. We like a quarterly update cadence here. We really feel like quarterly is the right time to do this. If we do it more often, we're not gonna pick up the kind of things that we need. Things won't be changing. And if we do it less frequently, we might miss some really important trends that are happening with your customers. So quarterly cadence, easy reporting. It's all in one centralized location. This informs stakeholders, including the public. Right? The idea of this dashboard is we want the public to go in there to see those numbers and think like, whoa, this is really interesting. I want to play around with these numbers. I want to know a little bit more about how Cherriots is doing with this and with that. We want our dashboard to be engaging and to inform stakeholders. Again, this is a process that helps you benchmark with your peers and the nation as a whole. And this is my passion here. It's telling Cherriots' community value story. This is giving you ammunition so that when people say to you, what are you talking about? Your business is just moving people from A to B, and you're not moving that many people compared to the people on the highway. You can say, well, wait a minute. That's not all that we do. We are a big part of this community. We have results to show that. We can show you stuff beyond just the number of people that we're moving that shows you the value in our service and how our community feels. Here's our 8 agencies. We have a really nice spread across the country. Long Beach, you guys, Denver, CATS in Charlotte, Albany, CDTA in Albany, New York, VIA in San Antonio, The Rapid in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and Lane Transit in Eugene, up the road. And we're really excited because we're adding to this, right? So we fully expect that by the end of the year to double this number, if not more. We are just about, I believe, to sign up Birmingham and Cleveland are going to add to our ranks. So we're not satisfied with 8. We're not satisfied with 10. We want a whole bunch more. The reason we want a whole bunch more is because these are feeding this national dashboard. That's one of the ideas behind this TransDash concept is that not only are there individual agency dashboards, which is incredibly important for you and your community, but they feed a national dashboard. So anyone can go to the national dashboard and understand, how do transit users feel about transit across the country? How do they find value in this? All of this will be centrally located at that dashboard, and the more agencies that we sign up for it, the more powerful it becomes, right? So we fully expect to sign up more by the end of the year. Let's spend a few minutes just understanding conceptually what we mean when we talk about transit's value over volume. We spent a lot of time historically looking at ridership. Pre-pandemic, that was the whole game, right? How do we increase ridership? How do we get more riders on there? And then the pandemic came, and we had a lot of other concerns. And then as the pandemic is slowly moving behind us, we have this conversation turning right back to ridership. Right? All of the discussion is this. Have you seen the Wall Street Journal put out a really great article a few weeks ago? Transit spiraled, the spiral death of transit again. Will riders come back? All about ridership, ignoring all of the other stuff that transit does for customers, for communities, and for taxpayers, right? So what about customer satisfaction and net promoter score, things we've already spoken about quite extensively tonight. But what about connectivity? How much your transit service allows people to get to the jobs they need to get to a healthcare appointment that they need to get to the school that they need to get to? How about transit's impact on the climate, on improving the region's health, on congestion reduction, on equity, or this idea of community relevance, right? This whole idea that we discussed a few moments ago of the community survey, right? How important is transit to the community beyond the people actually using it? And the last two that we typically talk about here are kind of their taxpayer values. These are the money values. Productivity, right? How well the agency itself handles its finances. And then this idea of economic impact. This is really important, right? Transit agencies employ lots of people. Cherriots has workers, and those workers get paychecks. And those workers go home and they buy groceries and clothes for their family. And that has a local economic impact that goes just beyond the people moving from A to B. Right? APTA has a really great tool that we like to use that measures this with a whole bunch of different inputs. So there's all of this value beyond, hey, there's this many people on our buses, right? There's all of this really, really rich stuff going on in public transit, and that's the idea of TransDash. It tries to bring all of this stuff together into one place in one location. Spending a few moments on your vision and mission. I was upstairs in your conference room, and you have a wonderful poster of this on the side, and I have to admit I took a picture of myself in front of it because I really like your vision, mission, and values. Your vision, we deliver value mobility options that inspire community pride, and your mission, creating community connections. And then I really love what you guys did with your values, which is that you spelled them out, that spells Cherriots. I think these are important to have in the TransDash presentation because these are the kinds of things that are driving TransDash. They're your values, they're your mission, they're things that you're focusing on. There's Cherriots. So turning the attention to the actual dashboard, the first success area that we're monitoring on the dashboard for you is community value. What exactly is our goal around community value? Well, this is the first quarter. We just started. So our goal is to establish a baseline, right? What is the community value score here? And we base this on community relevance. That's the sort of key important performance indicator. It's from our community survey, which you just heard about, and it's the percentage of people who agree that Cherriots provides value to the community. That's community relevance. But that's not the only metric we're following on the dashboard that references community value. We're also following connectivity index, net greenhouse gas emissions benefits, connectivity disparity index. This is this idea of connectivity, how well people can get to jobs and healthcare and school, but specific populations within your region and how well those people have access. Perceived access, perceived financial stewardship, and community awareness are key performance indicators that we're following for community value. For customer satisfaction, we are following the Net Promoter Score, which we've talked a bunch about tonight already. Customer satisfaction, on-time performance. So again, we don't ignore some of the traditional performance metrics. They're built in here, but they're not the only metrics we're following. Around culture of ownership, we're monitoring around culture of ownership, we're monitoring employee engagement. Employee engagement is kind of an index that we create from the results of the employee survey. So we ask employees, do they understand success? Do they have the skills, resources, and tools needed? Do supervisors provide feedback? And do they believe they work in a safe environment? And we weight each of those by about 25%. That's the employee engagement indicator that we're using for you on the dashboard. But we're also monitoring employee satisfaction, employees' mission and visions, and employees' internal communications as metrics as well. And financial stability. expenditures to outcomes, budget adherence, customers per revenue hour, and economic output per transit operations and maintenance costs. And again, our goal here for financial stability is really based on your evaluation and your providing us with the data that supports this financial stability. So those are the things that we're monitoring on your dashboard. And I want to get to some of the dashboard results. So pulling information out of your dashboard, and some of these results you've seen already this evening because we talked about them in the survey results. So the first is community value. We wanted to establish a baseline for the dashboard. We did establish a baseline for the dashboard. It is at 84%. That is a green light. Baseline established. Customer satisfaction. Also, we want to establish a baseline. And that baseline is established at 66. That is 66 as a net promoter score, you'll remember. A great baseline, a really high baseline, that is a green light. Culture of ownership. This one was to increase engagement score by 5%. So what we did was we established a baseline of 59, and we want to increase that by 5%, by 5 percentage points the next time we collect our TransDash data. So we're going to call that a yellow. And financial stability, which according to all the records that you've provided and all indications that you've given us, is on track. So we're going to call that a green light. So those are some things we've pulled directly from the dashboard. We're still populating a couple of the metrics on the dashboard. Some of the connectivity metrics, we're trying to make sure they're exactly accurate. We're using a tool that we're just getting used to, so we expect those to come online sometime in the next week or two, I would say. What are our next steps with the dashboard? Well, we want to finalize it with your leader, with you guys in this room. We want to integrate it into agency websites. We want to go public with it. We want the public to get in there. We want them to interact with it. We want them to play with the data and get engaged. We want to use these results as a tool. So this is a part of your strategic planning as a tool. It's a way to kind of monitor your progress towards those points. Using benchmarking to understand best practices. So what we've been telling our participating agencies is, hey, don't be surprised if you get a call from one of the other agencies saying, hey, how did you get such a high result in this particular category? What are you doing? Can you tell us what you're doing? And given that Cherriots got some pretty good results in some categories, I expect you guys are probably going to be fielding some phone calls from some other transit operators wondering, what are you doing right? Using benchmark to identify some best practices, thinking about metrics to add or subtract. So this is something that we know happens typically over a transit agency over the course of a quarter, that things come up that you might say to yourself, ooh, wait a minute, it would be really good if we had a read on that, if we can track that. That's the exact purpose of this dashboard. So these metrics on the dashboard are not one size fit all. They're designed by you and your team. You guys picked the dashboard metrics, not us. So that's what distinguishes our dashboard pretty solidly from something like the National Transit Database, right? The NTD says, these are the metrics that you must provide. We're not saying that at all. We're saying, what are the metrics you need to tell your value story? Those are the ones we want to work, and we understand that those are metrics that may change, right? So you may be like, hey, this has come up, it would help us to measure this, we can do that. And we want to just plan ahead for data collection moving forward. So here's a schedule. I like to post the schedule so everyone knows what we're doing here. We finished out our first quarter. We are moving on to our second quarter. So we'll be doing our national presentation around our second quarter in May. We'll be doing our TransDash presentation here for you guys between April and May, April 24th and May 5th. And you can see each quarter, August, November, and somehow we'll get to February next year. Hopefully it'll be a little less snowy. And we'll have a full year of TransDash results at that time, which will be really, really, really exciting, as will the total number of agencies that participate, which will be much, much greater than it is today. Not that eight is certainly great. Wasn't there a show, 8 is Enough? That was a TV show I remember from my youth. But it's not enough for us. We want more, and we will keep signing people up. So that is the end of the TransDash presentation. I'd love to address any questions or comments from you guys.
Questions or comments?
Well, I'll make a comment.
Please.
I have a question. First, thank you for being here tonight and sharing this information. Is kind of being in the trenches along with Bobby and the staff. Starting to see the results in the coming quarters is going to be super important. And I think the whole TransDash work that we're doing in the years ahead, being able to tell a story to the community about value and what they value is going to be really important as we look to expand and enhance our current services. So while we're just getting started, a couple of years from now, when we have an archive of data to see how things move along is going to be super important. So excited about the partnership and this whole program.
I think you mentioned it, but I've already forgotten it. When will the TransDash be live? I want to get lost in it.
In the next couple of weeks, there's a couple of metrics we're fine-tuning and
Okay.
gathering the data for. And then we're going to make it public on our website internally on our internal communication base as well as our website.
Great.
Yeah,
So will it be public facing?
it will be,
That's
yes, on
great.
our website.
Questions or comments? I do just want to say that I'm very excited about this. What I do professionally, we use a lot of dashboards to measure just about everything. And so this is speaking my language, and I'm really excited that we're measuring so many different things. It's really exciting, and I love how this prioritizes value over volume. And it's fantastic. So thank you. All right. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So next on our agenda is public comment. So I would invite any member of the public who happens to be either in attendance in person or virtually, if they would like to provide public comment, they are welcome to do so. Okay, not seeing any public comment. I do want to note that we did receive written public comment from Kathy Lincoln, a former board member of the Cherriots Board. You all should have received that by email, but I wanted to just read into the record a little bit, or highlight into the record some of the things she talked about, which were this survey, which we have spent a fair amount of time going over, and the positive perception that the community and our riders have of us. She was giving us kudos for that. And then she's expressed excitement for the battery electric buses that are coming, as well as South Salem Transit Center. So Kathy, thank you very much for your public comment. Next, we'll proceed to the consent calendar. So unless there are any issues with the items on the consent calendar, would someone like to make a motion? Please.
I move to approve the consent calendar.
Okay, we have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay, next we'll proceed to the action items.
Sure, I'll ask Greg Thompson, our maintenance manager, to come forward. I just want to note, you should have an amended copy of the board report in front of you, or it was also electronically put in your packet. And we'll explain the reason for the amendment. Doesn't change the overall nature, but it clarifies what we're trying to do.
President Davidson, members of the board, good evening. Tonight, I'm asking the board to authorize the general manager to execute a contract amendment with Creative Bus Sales for the purchase of 4 Category D vehicles for use in the local fixed route service for a total contract amount not to exceed $729,464. At the February 24th, 2022 board meeting, approval was granted for the general manager to execute a contract with Creative Bus Sales for the purchase of 4 Category D vehicles for use in the local fixed route service for an amount not to exceed $662,352. The resulting contract was executed in March of 2022. After the execution of that contract in November of 22, staff was notified of a price increase and that Creative Bus Sales would not be able to hold that contract price. Creative Bus Sales was also unsure if additional price increases would occur again prior to the build date. Price increases are a result of supply chain issues, rising cost of goods, and delays in production schedules that are experienced throughout the industry and nationwide. The district was recently notified that the pricing reflected today is the final price. These 4 smaller buses will be used to, what we're calling, right fit the local fleet and serve routes having ridership that does not justify the use of larger buses. Comparatively, these buses cost less to maintain and consume less fuel. District staff performed research prior to the beginning of this original procurement to ensure the smoothest transition to this fleet size. Considerations when selecting a vehicle were the seating capacity, the ability to kneel, and a mobility ramp with an approach angle that mirrors that of the current fixed route fleet. There were no Category D alternative fuel vehicles available with these specifications. The overall project includes the purchase of the 4 Category D vehicles, the purchase of equipment, which includes fare boxes, APC, which is automatic passenger counters, CAT AVL systems, and radios. So everything that the fixed route buses are equipped with, these smaller buses will be equipped with. The total project costs are outlined in the table below, and we'll go through those. Approval tonight is for the contract amendment for the purchase of just the 4 buses themselves. The additional vehicle equipment will be purchased at a later time through various vendors using ODOT STIF formula funds. So the financial impact of the total project are the Category D buses are $182,366 each, for a total of $729,464. Each vehicle will be equipped with $52,525 worth of the equipment that we talked about. There's also $550 for the Buy America audits, which are required. And then we have $800 for the contract legal review. Funding for the total project is funded from an ODOT STIF discretionary fund in the total amount of $655,956. It has an 80%, 20% match, and an additional $285,508 using ODOT STIF formula funds, which is 100% grant funded for that. So staff recommends that the board authorize the general manager to execute a contract with Creative Bus Sales, or contract amendment, if I didn't say that, I'm sorry, with Creative Bus Sales for the purchase of 4 Category D vehicles for use in the local fixed route service for a total contract amount not to exceed $729,464. And I will take any questions I know the answers to.
Okay. We'll filter those before. Yeah. I'll lead off with a question. What is the useful life of a Category D bus?
President Davidson, thank you for that. The useful life is 5 years. The minimum recommended useful life is 5 years or 150,000 miles.
Okay. And then, given that the funding for these vehicles are coming not from FTA, do they have to, how my understanding at least is that FTA requires us to ensure that vehicles last that recommended useful life. Would those same requirements be placed on us even though it's not FTA money?
Yeah, we do have our own internal benchmarks, which exceeds what the FTA minimum useful life is.
Okay.
And those size vehicles, internally, we say 8 years.
Got it.
Yeah, and ODOT has their own.
Oh, yeah,
which
that
are-
makes sense.
Which match the federal.
Okay,
Correct.
okay. Other questions? Please.
Thank you, President Davidson. What's the capacity of a Category D bus?
With this size, they'll have 14 seated and 2 mobility stations in
Okay,
each bus,
and 14, and that's versus on a 40-foot bus.
which is about 40 passengers.
I thought I had that right, but then I was
Yeah.
worried that I was conflating the size with the passenger count. And then I know, I have heard the argument in the past, well, look, there's nobody on that bus. Why don't you just run a smaller bus at that time of day? But buses are a little bit like parking lots on Black Friday. You got to run a bus that can hold the amount of customers you're going to have at the busiest time on that route. So we're not right sizing by flexing it in and out of a route would be my guess. We've selected one or two routes that we are operating on.
Correct, that is the premise. Years ago, we did a kind of a, I don't know if you remember the, what was it called? The West Salem Connector?
Yeah.
Which was kind of a test for what that right size looking like. That one was, a struggle to use older vehicles that had already far exceeded their useful life, so keeping the reliability. So that showed that on the ridership for those routes would support a smaller vehicle. So this is kind of almost a continuation of that.
Excellent, thank you. And then my last question, at least for now, is I think our 40-foot buses, are they mostly Gilligs? Have I got the right manufacturer?
We're really close right now. We are putting 5 brand-new buses in service, which will remove our oldest Orion 7 buses, and that will make our local fleet, besides these 4, 100% Gillig.
So that's just it. So besides these 4, does that increase the maintenance complexity or the cost? I mean, I know that some
it
cars are
doesn't.
easier to maintain than others. I assume buses are the same way.
Absolutely. Having a consistent fleet, it makes things a lot easier, but we have a very diverse fleet. We support the regional fleet, which has Bluebirds, cutaways of various sizes. We support all of our non-revenue vehicles. We support the Cherriots lift fleet, and they have various vehicle makes and models. We've done everything from, we're getting ready to do battery buses. We have CNG, we have diesel, we have hybrid, we have gasoline. So we have a very good maintenance department, I'm just saying.
Indeed, we do. Well, that's it. I'm super excited to get these buses in hand and to see how the service performs, because I know as we're looking at mobility options when we're building out transit centers into the future, figuring out how these smaller buses fit into the service model for the community is, I think, going to be a really big piece of increasing those ridership numbers that we were talking about earlier. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions? Okay, I'll jump into the breach. The stiff discretionary funds, are these the 2022 funds or the 2023 ones that we looked at last month? I can't imagine they're this
That I
year's.
will defer to Denise.
They're not the 2023, it would be 2022.
Okay, great. And then in which case, am I remembering correctly that these were initially at least planned to be used on the new Route 22? No. Oh, interesting.
So the vehicles, President Davidson, the vehicles that we put right sizing the fleet, so we included routes like the 26, 27, 14, 12, and also put in there for other services, microtransit or other uses within the fixed route system. So they weren't directly put in for the Route 22, but we will probably use them for that route and some of the others as we move forward.
So this is probably a follow-up to you, Mr. French. Does that mean that so will these be the first of our, what I'm going to call nimble vehicles for our fixed routes? Or do we already have others? Because I'm probably getting things jumbled, so please correct me.
No, these will be the first.
Okay.
We applied for these and got these, and then we did apply for some vehicles for the Route 22, and we're not successful in that grant application process. So these will be the first ones, and they've been delayed for a long time due to the current situation with manufacturing.
Got it. And then if our 2023 discretionary grant is successful, which we'll find out in a few months, those would be additional vehicles to this nimble fleet.
That would be correct.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Other questions or comments? Okay, if there are none, who would like to make a motion?
for the purchase of 4 Category D vehicles for the use in the local fixed route service for an amount not to exceed $729,464.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? I'll refrain. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we'll proceed to the informational reports portion of our agenda.
Okay, so I'll ask Service Planning Manager Chris French to please come present the performance report.
Yes, please. Sorry. Thank you, and good evening, President Davidson and members of the board. I'm here this evening to talk about the second quarter performance report, October to December of 2022. And first, we'll look at ridership totals for FY23 quarter two year to date. Weekday total ridership for FY23, we've had a total ridership across all services, just over 1.1 million riders, which is up. I think this is the first quarter that we've actually broken the 1 million mark. On weekend service, Saturday ridership, we provided 124,000, just over 124,000 rides, and Sunday, just over 65,000 rides. And for all services, we provided over 1.3 million rides year to date. Next, we'll look at ridership averages in quarter two. So this is average daily rides per month, broken down by per month. As you can see, across all services, weekdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, we're up. In December, for Saturdays, or for weekdays and Saturdays, we dropped slightly, but for Saturdays, we did have 2 days of service that we didn't operate completely, so seeing those drops was a whole day's worth of service where we had no ridership. On the regional system, we saw similar increases across all months of service, month over month, with the same situation of Saturdays, or the December months being lower, but realizing that we did have those weather events. Weekday averages by route. First, we'll look at our corridor routes, and we're seeing a significant increase in boardings per revenue hour, with the Route 21 crossing over that 20 boardings per revenue hour. So looking at the 20 boardings per revenue hour, if you compare that to quarter two of FY20, which was just prior to the pandemic, the Route 21 was averaging 24.3 boardings per revenue hour. So that kind of shows where we're going as our ridership is coming back. Route 16 was our top performer with 14 riders per revenue hour, and similar to the Route 21, the Route 16 had 15.2 boardings per revenue hour. For the weekday rider revenue per revenue hour, we're still lower than our targets, but looking at this over last year, quarter two, we're up 18% compared to the previous quarter. Now we're looking at Saturday, the corridor routes. We take a pretty big jump with 22.8 boardings per revenue hour on Saturdays. Wow, I don't know. Sorry. Pre-pandemic, the first 3 months of the service with us starting Saturday service, we were averaging 26.6 boardings per revenue hour.
Could I ask you a question?
Yes.
So you referenced the Route 21 for the weekday, so I'm going back a couple slides.
Oh,
You
yeah.
don't have to go
Okay.
back if you don't want to, but the 24 averaging, that does take into account the longer service hours, right? Or is that somehow,
Correct, it would. It's a direct correlation to the number of revenue hours and passengers. So we
Right.
have do have fewer hours, but we do have, in those revenue hours, we're averaging 20.
okay, so
20.
adding 2 additional hours doesn't necessarily increase the number because it's by revenue hour.
Correct.
Thank
So
you.
the number of people that are getting on divided by the number of revenue hours that we offered.
Yeah, I'm always going to have this problem, I think. Thank you for your patience, though.
It could also be frequency. You could have less frequency, so there's less hours.
Right, okay. Which is why it's so high on Saturdays. Because we run the routes only hourly. Or no,
Saturdays are half hour
Yeah.
on those routes, so yes, but that shows that the people are out there riding regularly. So for Saturday rides per revenue hour, Route 16 is 9.8, so we're approaching that 10 boardings per revenue hour goal that we have. And that route averaged 10.3 prior to the pandemic. For the Saturday regional routes, similar to the other weekday routes, they are still reduced, but this is a 40% increase over the previous year's quarter two. Sunday averages, Route 21 across all days of the week was the top performer with 23.1, and many of the other routes pushing up. One thing to note, 21, 19, and 2 were 80% over last year's quarter two, so an 80% increase on those routes. Holiday ridership for FY23, we see that each of the holidays has increased, with Veterans Day being over 4,000. One of the things that we're looking at as we go into the future with that particular holiday fell on a Friday and really had a drastic effect on our ability to maintain and stay on schedule because of the number of people that were on that Sunday level of service. We had a lot of the core network was a half hour late, and they were putting buses out, trying to get them caught up, but it was a significant impact on our ability to provide reliable service. And with that, I can answer any questions. I will also, before I take questions, I'll say we got the January numbers for the youth fair, and we provided just over 69,000 rides for the month of January for the youth fair program. That was a 94.6% increase over the previous year. And we're up 73.81 for the year overall in youth ridership. With that, we've been looking at prior to the pandemic and kind of seeing where we are. Even with these significant jumps in ridership, we still haven't reached the level of what we were pre-pandemic. So we were hauling more youth during that time, but it's exciting to see. Our largest month was October of 2019, was 72,000 youth riders in October of 2019. I thought that was an interesting piece, but we're seeing great increases with the youth program, but we still aren't completely back to where we were pre-pandemic. And now I'll answer any questions you have.
Any questions? No. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next, we have the strategic plan quarterly report.
I'll ask Bobby Kidd, our Strategic Initiatives Administrator, to present the report.
There we go, just making sure it works. All right, good evening, President Davidson and members of the board. The strategic plan was adopted in August, and I'm very excited to be here this evening to present the results of all of the work that's been done over the course of quarter two. So in this report, we're going to summarize progress achieved on the organizational tactics, and they were identified in the work plan going into fiscal year 23. And this presentation tonight speaks to the commitment from the executive leadership team and Cherriots staff to provide full transparency of our work throughout the strategic plan and to report quarterly to the board. So just a quick reminder of our guiding principles, vision, mission, and values. We've actually seen these presented this evening already. And I'm going to speak to how the values specifically have been integrated or starting to be integrated into the threads of Cherriots already. And I'm going to report on that later on in the presentation. So this is a reminder of our 4 success outcomes: community value, customer satisfaction, culture of ownership, and financial sustainability. I will direct your attention to the community value and customer satisfaction metrics or success outcomes, and for fiscal year 23 was to establish a baseline, and it's already been presented this evening, but we have established a baseline now for those 2 success outcomes, and it occurred in quarter 2 through the community value survey and the customer satisfaction survey. The culture of ownership success outcome, we went into the fiscal year already with our baseline of employee engagement score of 59%, and we're going to do a phase 2 or a wave 2 survey in the spring of the employees, and then we'll be able to see if we met our success goal of raising the employee engagement score by 5 percentage points. And then for financial sustainability for year 1 was focusing on expenditure and revenue reporting. So this is a reminder of our 4 big overarching success outcomes for the strategic plan. Now, to talk about the organizational tactics, there are 23 organizational tactics we're working on throughout the fiscal year. You'll notice in quarter 1, the status I reported was we were in progress on 23 out of 23 tactics. And in this quarter, for quarter 2, we are in progress in 22 out of 23. You'll notice that 1 did move to the at-risk category, and I'm going to touch on that in the next slide. So the at-risk tactic the title is Project Management and Vendor Contract Management Technical Capacity. And this is because it's been moved to the at-risk category due to unforeseen staffing vacancies, and it's placed at risk so we can dive in and do some planning and adjustment as needed after the vacancies get filled, or while we're looking for the vacancies to be filled. All right. Now I'm going to highlight 6 organizational tactics. There's been a lot of wonderful work done in quarter 2 on all of the organizational tactics. It's hard to choose and narrow it down to highlight just a few, but I chose 6. In quarter 1, I did 3, and I doubled it this quarter because of the amazing work that's being done. So let's first focus in on the strategic plan rollout tactic. So it's really exciting to announce that over the course of quarter 2, there were 21 presentations that were conducted to internal audiences presenting and rolling out the strategic plan. All administrative employees have received the presentation for the rollout of the plan. All but just a few transit operators have received the presentation, and those very few that have not, it's because they're on long-term absences. And then there are only 6 transportation/maintenance employees that have not received it in the entire district, and those are going to be scheduled for this quarter 3. So all in all, I think it's like 95% of Cherriots has been rolled out to the strategic plan. And the strategic plan has been incorporated into the onboarding process during the Meet with the General Manager session. And the detailed budget calendar will be published in quarter 3. That includes the strategic plan update process as part of the budget calendar. So a lot of work has been done in rolling out the strategic plan. And next step is rolling it out to the community and sharing the word. So the next 2 slides are the conducting of the community value surveys and the customer satisfaction survey. I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty of those because we've already heard some wonderful results from that. But it is really nice to have now established the baseline data from these 2 surveys, and it's really helpful as we plan for fiscal year 24, which has already started. It's amazing to me that we're halfway through FY23 and we're planning for FY24, but it does make sense because we have to budget and plan for it, so that is also happening as we speak. So conduct community value, and then the next one is customer satisfaction. In regard to the long-range transit plan, staff worked with Jacobs Engineering Group during the second quarter to complete the draft and final documents. Jacobs revised the draft of the document incorporating final comments from the project's technical advisory committee, citizens advisory committee, staff, and the board itself. The final copy was presented to the board and adopted at the December 15th, 2022 meeting. So that's also very exciting. In regards to the launching of the DEI plan, so much work was done in quarter 2. So first of all, executives and senior leaders joined the quarterly leadership forum in November, which included a diversity, equity, and inclusion listening session, wherein a baseline was set for knowledge and a common language within the agency. And then also, in addition to that, 25 DEI listening sessions were conducted in November and December to include all staff to set the baseline of knowledge and common language within the agency. So a lot of those were during in-service training for the operators, and then also staff joined those, and there were 25 sessions, listening sessions in total. So a lot of work in quarter 2 on that one. And then the final tactic I'm highlighting this evening is model your Cherriots values. I spoke to this earlier when I presented the values on the screen. So HR presented the campaign that they're using to spread the values throughout the district to executive and senior leadership team. And then senior leaders identified positive influencers inside their divisions or departments. And then, starting in January, so last month, they were able to, at the first GM roundtable of calendar year 2023, the first influencer was able to share what communication meant to them, which was the first value on our Cherriots value list. And then HR has also incorporated the values into the new hire onboarding presentations. And again, this is a lovely representation, visual image of the Cherriots acrostic value list. Now to speak briefly to TransDash, because we've already had a presentation this evening. We ended quarter 2 data submission in January. We're still putting it all together with TransDash. Should be going live on our website within the next couple of weeks. We participated in the national quarterly results presentation to the 8 agencies who are signed on with TransDash, where they were able to share some highlights of the dashboards before they went live, or before they go live. And then the next, TransDash presentation to the board this evening, you were able to hear some insights from TransDash themselves. So some general updates in regards to the strategic plan. So originally the plan was to present the findings of each quarter the month following the end of the quarter, but we moved that to the second month following each quarter, just because with the way data collection is going to be with TransDash and all of the organizational tactic data collection, it makes sense to do it on the second month following each quarter. We also plan to begin rolling out the Cherriots strategic plan to the community. I referenced that earlier. And then we cannot forget there are 25 division tactics happening that we're working on. So we have 23 organizational, and each division has a subset of division tactics that they're working on as well. So we cannot forget all of that work as well. And then plans for quarter three, we are almost 2 months into quarter three already. So we're continuing achieving progress on both the organizational and division tactics. And then the Q3 data uploaded to TransDash, or uploading to TransDash, will happen in April. And I'll report on the TransDash findings in my next quarterly report for Q3. And then like I mentioned earlier, we are already strategically planning for FY24 and getting those organizational tactics, division tactics, looking at our success outcomes, ready to go for FY24. With all that being said, thank you so much for having me, and I would love to answer any questions if you have them.
Any questions? Director Carney?
Thank you, President Davidson, and thank you, Bobby, for the great presentation. This is also inspiring. I just wanted to commend the district on the listening sessions to do an employee assessment around the DEI plan. We have been, where I work, working on establishing a DEI plan, and the assessment was one of the hardest pieces. We did it through a survey, and I questioned how effective it was. We didn't have the participation I would have liked, and I just want to say I think that is an exemplary model that people should consider following. And then the other comment I had was, I know this is internal with the model your Cherriots values, but if there was, I don't want to drag anybody to a board meeting that's going past 8 o'clock that did not sign up for it. But I would love to hear more about those internal champions, if there was any way to kind of get a representation of that and share it with the board. I'm sure that we would all be inspired and love to hear about it. And that's all my questions and comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions or comments? I'll lead with one comment, which is on the at-risk tactic. I just want to say that from my personal vantage point, I think that is a great thing that is being called out and identified, and that as far as I'm concerned, that is not an issue identifying it at risk. That is a good thing. Then we can put the resources to it that are needed. So, my question though is, and you probably said this, in which case I apologize, but will the organizational tactics and the division tactics be visible in TransDash?
I don't believe inside TransDash, but they will be on the website. We have a scorecard, and year
right.
one was establishing baseline. And so as this fiscal year kind of wraps up, we're going to be able to insert our baselines, and there's going to be a Cherriots like QR code on the top, and we'll be able to go in and dig deeper on it. So yes, it's not going to be in TransDash, but it will be public.
Okay, so can I right now go look at the 23 organizational tactics and 25? I can.
They're in our strategic plan outline.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, the progress of them,
Oh, the progress.
like the quarterly progress.
It'll be through these presentations right now.
Okay.
And then we'll have a section on the website that we're going to be updating. It's not done quite yet.
Sure, no, that's fine. I really appreciated the highlight that you did of the 6. I would love to not, when we're at 8 o'clock, go through all of them, but I would love to on my own time go through them, so.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Next, financial Q2 report.
So I'll ask Denise Leroux, our Chief Financial Officer, to come forward and present the report.
Good evening, President Davidson and members of the board. Tonight, I am presenting the year-to-date through second quarter financial report for FY23. Next slide, please. For the general fund resources and revenues, 50% through all of these numbers, 50% means that we are right on budget because we're looking at half of the year. But for the general fund resources and revenues, we are currently at 56% of budget in total. The federal funding is below budget, but a $4.8 million drawdown was processed and received in January, which is always a timing issue for the drawdowns. They are always they're always the month following the end of the quarter. The property tax revenues appear to be very high, but that's because of the bulk of the property taxes are collected in November. So we'll get small amounts in February and May, but we have most of the yearly amount now. Next slide, please. For the general fund requirements and expenses, in total, we're at 46% of the budget. The percentages between divisions range from 38% to 52% of the annual budget currently. Next slide, please. For the Transportation Programs Fund resources and revenues, in total, we're at 31% of budget. State funds are at 42% of the budget through 2 quarters, and federal funds are at 11%, again, due to the timing of the drawdowns for the federal funds. It's the trend that we see every year. And the passenger fares are at 55% of the total annual budget. Next slide, please. For the Transportation Programs Fund requirements and expenses, we are in total at 29%, which is well within our 50% for the first 6 months of the year. Next slide, please. This slide looks a bit odd, but a lot of that is due to the budget amounts that we have for these two. For the state capital projects resources, our budget for 6 months is $633,000. For federal, it's $9.9 million. So we have received 74% of our state funding for the first 2 quarters of the fiscal year and 5% of our federal funding for the same period. We have processed an additional drawdown of $1.7 million that was done at the end of January for the federal funds, and that was for the CNG station replacement, which was paid for with federal 5307 funds. Next slide, please. And for the capital projects expenses, the Finance Division has spent 38% of their budgeted expenses on the Tyler Munis software implementation. The Technology and Program Management Division is at 4% their budget, and that was mostly spent on stops and shelters. The Operations Division has spent 9% of their annual budget, and with their largest expense being the compressed natural gas replacement station for the $1.7 million. Next slide, please. May I answer any questions?
Any questions? Please.
Thank you. I don't know if I'm supposed to call you Chief Financial Officer LaRue. I guess that rolls right off the tongue. On the capital project fund requirements, your second last slide, just the slide we were just looking at there. If we get to a place with South Salem Transit Center, we'll get a bunch more bars on that histogram.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So those aren't just sort of discrete buckets. There's more that we could see there. Okay, that was my
Yes.
big question. Thank you.
Other questions? I have a question that I will likely regret asking, but I saw passenger fares in both the general fund and the transportation program funds. Why is that?
In the general fund, it's for our fixed route fares.
I knew it, yeah, okay.
And in the transportation programs, that would be regional fares, lift fares. So,
Thank you. I'm glad that was public. Other questions? Perhaps someone would like to embarrass themselves as well?
Hey, I mean,
sure about our financial management, so you're
Yeah.
helping explain
I,
it. Yeah.
I am the community member. All right, well, Chief Financial Officer LaRue, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so next up, we have the general manager's report.
Great, I do have a few items to report, but first, I need to start this off with acknowledging and recognizing some individuals who were here at 4 o'clock this morning, and that's the members of our Emergency Operations Center staff who were managing the weather events, and also the frontline employees, the drivers, the maintenance folks, putting chains on buses, our customer service folks who were here early in the morning addressing all the disruption. It does seem to be a bit calmer now, but a great job of making sure our customers could get where they needed to be, helping to create those community connections regardless of the weather. So well done, EOC staff and frontline employees. Earlier tonight, but due to the weather, I wasn't able to participate because the hearing was canceled. I was scheduled to testify in front of the Joint Committee on Transportation on House Bill 3224. That's the feasibility study for the streetcar in Salem. That meeting will probably be rescheduled next week, either Tuesday or Thursday JCOP meeting. And I'll testify at that time. As you all know, MTM is our new contracted services provider who assumed responsibility on January 1st. And last weekend, I joined their monthly safety meeting along with Tom Dietz and Ben Sawyer, our contracted services manager, just welcoming them into the Cherriots family of services, thanking them for what they do, sharing a little bit about the customer satisfaction and the results. I just kind of teased it, told them we had to share it with the board first, and that we'd get that information to them after we presented it to you. And just a chance to acknowledge that they are a part of the services that we provide. So it was a good time to meet. Many of the drivers are continuing on from the previous provider, but new management staff, and it was a great opportunity to just check in with them, let them know we're there for them. Also, just a reminder, Director Navarro and I will be attending the APTA Legislative Conference in a couple weeks, and we'll report back on that at the March board meeting. The Federal Transit Administration and the US DOT have opened the grant application periods for low and no emission vehicles and the bus and bus facility grants. Our grant work group is feverishly working on those applications now, along with the congressionally directed spending applications that go along with those. And as a reminder, in your legislative agenda that you adopted in January, we'll be applying for electric buses under the low and no emission grant program and requesting construction funds for the South Salem Transit Center. And so April 11th is a big day. That is the scheduled hearing for reappointments of board members whose terms are set to expire on June 30th. All the applications are in. The process is working its way through, and the hearing scheduled for April 11th. And if all goes as planned, the three of you will be reappointed for full terms, and a replacement for Sub-District 1 will be appointed. It is the local government's state of the county, city period. And tomorrow, Kira will send out the details, but the county commissioners are having their state of the county presentation, and the mayors of Salem and Kaiser are making their states of the city presentations. And so we'll send you the information, and if you'd like to attend, we'll make sure you can get registered if your schedule allows. And then the last thing I wanted to comment on is an excellent customer comment, which is a representative of the great staff that we have here at Cherriots. So I'd like to read it to you. We received this on February 16th. So here's the comment. It says, "Good morning, Cherriots. Yesterday, at approximately 2 p.m., a young man and I were at the downtown transit center asking for help from the Cherriots customer service desk. We were confused, frustrated, and stressed out. The customer service we received in bold type was awesome. The gold standard of customer service. We asked the lady to look up the address to Highland Elementary School, which she did quickly and with a smile. Then we asked what bus would take us there, and she took out a piece of paper, wrote down the Highland Elementary School's address, the number of the bus route, and the bay where it stops, how often it leaves the transit center, and she wrote down the nearest stop to the Highland School. She explained it so clearly. It completely turned the day around for us. I wish so much I had gotten her name. She was sitting at the station on the east edge of the customer service center. I hope you can identify her so you can tell her how wonderful she does her job and how much it matters. I hope you can tell her that she inspires me to be a better person. That person is Melissa Jocelyn, one of our customer service reps. She is aware of it. We shared that with her, and she gave me permission to share that with all of you tonight. So just a representation of the great things that happen when no one is looking every day. So, and that concludes my message and my report.
Thank you, General Manager Pollock. Director Navarro, could you provide your board report, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, President Davidson. So, not a whole lot to report from Kaiser. I did attend the Coffee with Kathy event this month, and she wanted me to remind everybody that June 11th is Kaiser's 40th birthday. So if you guys are interested in celebrating 40 years of Kaiser being Kaiser, that will be at the Civic Center. And it's a 2-day event, so it'll be Friday night is an 80s themed dance party, and and then Saturday is going to be full of performances and other fun stuff. I wasn't able to attend Director Davidson's, President Davidson's testimony in person, but I did get to see it online, and it was awesome seeing everybody quote Director Davidson and how we should move forward with this study. So that was really awesome seeing that and being able to work with the different agencies and cities and groups that came together to support that piece of legislation. And I will be in DC with the general manager later this month, or later next month, doing exactly that with our federal representatives. And that concludes my report, but I did want to add that I've been having some really awesome conversations with Chemeketa Community College as of late, and would like to add talking about their Chemeketa Transit Center to a work session in the future.
That sounds great. Let's do it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Director Navarro. Director Carney.
Thank you, President Davidson. I just want to echo Alan's or General Manager Pollock's comments and give praise to our frontline workers and the folks that were helping get things up and running this morning when everyone was transportation challenged and our roads were not in great condition. That is a lot of work early in the morning. And it is super important to so many people in our community. So thank you all for a very long day. And thanks to you and to Alan for your participation in the legislative process. Can be a lot of fun, can be some more drama than that. Not a lot to report. We are meeting with the SCATS Policy Committee on the 28th. So that's next week. We'll continue to discuss the Metropolitan Transportation Plan and its chapters. We are starting earnest discussion of the Unified Planning Work Plan, the UW, sorry, I gotta look up my acronym here. Unified Planning Work Program, which includes the public participation element. And there is a steering committee on safety. Do I have that right?
Don't look at me, I've not been to the meetings.
that I indicated last month that I expressed my interest in, so we will see how that goes in terms of empaneling that group. And then otherwise, I just wanted to report that I attended the City of Salem's online meeting today that was hosted in conjunction with Kaiser and the Land Conservation, and the Department of Land Conservation and Development about what they're calling their mixed-use walkable areas, which is an element of their planning for the climate-friendly and equitable communities rulemaking. And just for a little perspective and maybe a glimpse at the future, the city of Salem is pretty sure that one mixed-use walkable area, which, to remind folks what that means, will or should contain zoned capacity for 30% of our incoming population over the next 20 years. So a big kind of density boom in this area possible, right? The market will meet it where the market meets it. So, there's potential for growth in other areas, but zoned capacity for that. So one is anticipated to be right in our central business area downtown, so the historic downtown. The second is proposed maybe for the north downtown area, though so that's like the Salem Cinema, which is sub-District 3, right? That's us. Woo! We're getting, we're getting it. And then Kaiser faces a little bit different challenge because they don't have a central business district. So they're looking at I think it's called the River Cherry Overlay, where they've got 3 different pockets. It's Lock Haven, Shamawa, which is the Kaiser Transit Center, and then Cherry Center further south, to sort of give that same kind of density bonus. So as we're looking forward at planning service and trying to have incentives for developers and incentives for people to live in places, this is a way to kind of focus our thought and our thinking. Anyway, it was a great meeting. I wasn't able to stay for the whole thing. It was over the lunch hour and then beyond. So I'll keep my eye on it and let you know what else. But the City of Salem's work on Our Salem, which was their comprehensive plan update, is really marrying well with this process. So we're really well poised, I think, as a city to capitalize on this and advance smoothly where other cities are facing some challenges. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Director Carney. Director Hinojosa-Pressey.
Thank you, President Davidson. Very conveniently, we had the Citizens Advisory Committee meeting 2 days ago. So it's still fresh, and I also really want to say thank you to the Director of Operations for providing me with the notes, because I did take notes, but they were on the agenda and they look all whack, and I'm like flipping back and forth through everything. So some of the meeting highlights from the Citizens Advisory Committee, which was held in person and virtually on February 21st. Staff Director Steve Dickey's retirement was announced, and he will be missed. Service Planning Manager French presented the ridership report for the latest quarter, and as we saw here, this report showed steady growth in ridership and that the system is nearing pre-pandemic levels. That's one of the reasons why I really like being on the advisory committee, because then I get to see all the ridership reports before the board meeting, and then I get to text and be like, haha. The committee discussed the transition from NV transportation to MTM transit. That was also a really robust discussion, and we got to see 2 different perspectives of people trying to use the Lyft service, and some feedback of one person that directly had not a great experience, and then another person having feedback of having a really stellar experience. And thankfully, contracted services manager Sawyer was there and was able to provide the update, informing the committee that, yes, they were aware of a few minor issues, but it seems to be running well now, and also committed to addressing some of the issues that were brought up. There was also robust discussion on House Bill 3224, and there were questions if the board of directors of Cherriots had a position to support the concept, which is House Bill 3224 is a feasibility study on a trolley, which is connecting West Salem to downtown.
Yeah, that's what the bill says.
And then there was a question about the new QR codes at the bus stops, and not the printed schedules. And since there have been such rapid changes with service levels during the pandemic, Cherriots really couldn't keep up with printing those all the time, but staff is committed to discussing this internally and getting back to the committee about maybe having both the QR code and a printed schedule. Vice Chair Coffin also flagged that there are several pieces on the website that are incorrect with regard to names of contractors, and so staff stated that these would be addressed. Committee member Doherty proposed a new subcommittee to be focused on environment and sustainability, and the committee was interested in pursuing that. The work plan was discussed, and the committee agreed that the executive committee and staff would get the work plan updated, and then it would be presented at the next meeting for review. And the next meeting is scheduled for April 18th, 2023 at 5:30. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Director Hinojosa Presley. I'm up next. So the first thing I'd like to do is to appoint Director Duncan to serve on the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Subcommittee. As you all may recall, Director Nguyen, having left us, there is now a vacancy on the DEI Subcommittee. And so I've asked Director Duncan to serve in that capacity, and she has agreed to. I have also asked Director Duncan to serve as chair of that subcommittee. And so very excited to continue to serve on that committee along with Director Hinojosa Presley, but be joined by Director Duncan and work with her as she chairs that subcommittee. In a similar vein, I am appointing Director Holmstrom to the Citizen Advisory Committee, and he will be replacing Director Hinojosa Presley as our board liaison to the Citizen Advisory Committee. So Director Holmstrom, thank you for your willingness to serve in that capacity. And that actually brings me to my next thing that I wanted to talk about, which was the idea of renaming the Citizen Advisory Committee. And I think unintentionally, the name of that body presupposes a limitation on membership that we do not necessarily intend. As I understand it, that body, which I'll now refer to as the CAC, the membership criteria that we care about is residency, not citizenship. As such, I am proposing that we rename that as a Community Advisory Committee. So we would continue to keep the CAC acronym. I believe it would only take a change in website language as well as bylaws. So I've discussed this with General Manager Pollock as well as our Chief Operation Officer, and it sounds doable, but of course, I wanted to gauge the consensus of the board if that was something that we would like to ask staff to undertake. I'm seeing some head nods. Okay?
100%.
Great, thank you. As General Manager Pollock and Director Navarro alluded to, on Tuesday, I had the opportunity to testify before the Joint Committee on Transportation at the Oregon Legislature, and on behalf of you all, I testified in support of House Bill 2662, which you may all recall is the bill to study extending the West Side Express commuter rail service that goes presently from Beaverton to Wilsonville on down to Salem. And so I explained our support. I also suggested a conceptual amendment to the committee that would amend the bill to explicitly consider governance. And so it was something that we had chatted about in our meeting. And so they seemed receptive to that. Of course, we won't necessarily know what that looks like until they do a work session on that. But the support was quite robust. I'm probably going to forget at least one of the cities that came out in support of it, but we had Salem, Kaiser, Aurora, Donald, Woodburn, and Wilsonville, all in public support of that, studying the extension of that passenger rail line. And so very exciting to see, and hopefully the study results, assuming the bill passes, will consider the creation of a more regional transit district. So, Director Enojo's Pressy and I, we were able to attend the Council of Governments annual dinner, which was excellent. Actually, I don't know, the food might have been horrible. I was unable to attend the dinner portion, but it was good. Okay, yeah. Oh,
The
that's right.
food
And
was
General
really
Manager Pollock was sitting right across from me. I'm sorry. But it was wonderful to come together and. Yeah, sorry. It was wonderful to come together as a region, so Marion, Polk, and Yamhill County, and to discuss the things that we as a region have been able to accomplish and to kind of reflect and honor some of the individuals that had served. It was wonderful to see Denise Van Dyke, a Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments employee, honored. Unfortunately, she was not able to be present at her honoring because she was killed by a vehicle late last year. But that was wonderful to see. I wanted to next flag the Board of Directors information document that Chief Communication Officer Feeney provided to us. And that first item, the ODOT funding around carbon reduction program, I would love to, at a future date, have a conversation about our role in a micromobility world. So if Cherriots should take an active role or maybe a partially active role in standing up what might be a bike share, for example, in Salem or in Kaiser. And so I think this would be a good source of revenue to launch something like that. So just wanted to put that bug in everyone's ear. And then earlier this month, I had an opportunity to meet with Mayor Chris Hoy and talk about a few things, and it was a very productive conversation, and I'm just excited to keep working with Mayor Hoy as well as Mayor Clark as we work towards advancing our shared goals. So that concludes my report, and I'll ask Director Duncan to provide your report.
Thank you very much. As it's 8:30, I'm going to try to keep mine a little shorter than normal, which, I know it's me, but we'll try. I was able to attend the Earthwise Green Business Networking event that was put on by the county, and I was happy to see Cherriots there. That was a particularly nice event because I was able to connect with some community members. Anytime I'm able to talk to community members directly that are not in any of my normal circles, it always is kind of nice. They particularly had some concerns about lack of bus stops in certain areas. We talked a little bit about zoning restrictions and things like that. But overall, it was a really nice conversation. It's always nice to see community members really engaged and active. I also was able to make it to the South Salem Connect, although I did have to leave a bit early, and saw Cherriots there as well. So just really applauding staff doing a very good job getting out to the groups that I think really are very important for us to be having a presence at, and being available to answer questions to community members when they have them. So just big kudos to staff there. And a lot of conversations. I work in a very public facing workplace where we have a lot of people in and out, and there have been many conversations lately about buses, especially with the weather that we've been experiencing on and off, and how many people are reliant on buses or are one very small, vehicle breakdown away from being reliant on the buses. And I think that that's an important thing to remember when we look at those community value numbers, to remember that part of that value is that safety net. And when we are, I brought up that one particular metric of the late in the evening, and I know I've been a broken record on this one, but particularly marginalized communities are sometimes the ones that are those that are more likely to work positions like swing shifts or have less favorable hours. And as we're moving forward, and I'm really excited to dig in with the DEI committee, and I know this isn't exactly relevant, but that's a piece that I want us to continue to pay attention to, and remembering that the certain communities are often on those more fringe types of positions, and making sure that we are able to move into a place where we can have coverage with them is something that I'm glad I get to be a part of. So it's been great, been a great month. Excited for next one, and I kept it to 4 minutes. It's a record. That's all.
Well done, Director Duncan. Director Holmstrom?
Yeah, thank you, President Davidson. So I just want to echo a lot of the other directors and say, give kudos to our excellent staff at the agency, obviously keeping things going. And, these numbers that we saw during our work session and earlier this meeting, I think is a testament to the agency and all the folks that work here and are able to get those numbers really high. It's just really great to see those. So very pleased to see that. A lot of work ahead to keep those up and keep going. This last month, I was able to, a couple weeks ago, visit with the general manager, kind of got a good, productive conversation one afternoon with him about kind of getting my feet under me as a new board member. It was very good. I appreciate that. Thank you. Had an opportunity to attend a meeting of the Sunny Slope Neighborhood Association, introduce myself, and just informally answer some questions. They're very interested in learning about the South Salem Transit Center and what's going to happen with that. And they were familiar with the fact that we're going to have electric buses. They knew about that, and they thought that was great. So, just a few folks, but folks know about us out in the community and are interested in what's going on. So that's great. And then had an opportunity to view online, President Davidson, your testimony at the Joint Transportation Committee at the legislature. I thought you did a great job. I think you were the most cited person on all the panels. You stuck in their heads, in the legislators' heads, and had some excellent points that they carried with them. So great job. I appreciate that. And with that, I think that's all I have for this month. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Director Holmstrom. With that, that concludes our agenda items today. Before we adjourn, though, I'd like to reiterate something that many of us have said, which is thank you very much to the frontline staff. I know I was very appreciative that when I rode the bus in today that I wasn't driving. And so thank you and kudos to the operators and the mechanics and everybody else that is keeping the buses running. So with that, we're adjourned.